Battlefield 6 has just been revealed to the world, and I was almost underlyingly impressed by just how much this was a statement piece more than anything else for EA and for Battlefield in terms of what this game is supposed to be, what it's going to be, and even just some of the other background stuff that they've done to really emphasize what Battlefield 6 is and why it's very, very different to its predecessor, Battlefield 2042. There was a lot that happened in this trailer that we're going to go through in this video today, including some very subtle references and hints, some very interesting inclusions of actual military hardware, which is really exciting to see, and a huge emphasis on some of the core mechanics that make Battlefield special. So make sure you drop a like and subscribe to this video as we dive into this today. And by the way, I am one of the people who is going to be at the multiplayer reveal, and I will be live streaming it from start to finish and bringing you exclusive coverage of Battlefield 6, so you don't want to miss that. The first and most important thing to mention is that this is very much a cinematic trailer. You know, this is something that EA and DICE in particular, who have this cinematic trailer team at Battlefield Studios, it's one of the best in the business. Even if 2042 wasn't the game for you, there's no denying that that trailer was absolutely outstanding, and it's just something that they keep doing and doing. Whatever they're getting paid, they probably need to slap on another zero. The trailer itself was a bit of world building as to what Battlefield 6 is, which is primarily a story-driven experience between NATO and a military corporation called Pax Armata. The idea here being that NATO seems to be suffering some kind of internal collapse, and world security has been turned upside down on its head by moneyed interests and corporations. I know a lot of people are a little bit disappointed to not see actual countries in this hypothetical or theoretical conflict that's taking place, but I do think that this does give the developers a bit more freedom in terms of the military asset pool that they can choose from and the weapons that they can introduce into the game. Usually, going for a certain country or faction requires a little bit of asymmetric warfare, and that can honestly limit what they're capable of doing in-game. So there are some pros and cons. I know some people are a little bit upset about it, but I do think it gives them more options going forward. If you were wondering if this trailer was for single player or multiplayer, the answer is kind of both, really. There will be a multiplayer reveal trailer on the way that's going to specifically focus on the multiplayer segment of Battlefield 6, but the reality is a lot of the tech that you're seeing on display here will be in the multiplayer segment of the game, and more importantly, a lot of the environments and worlds that you saw in the trailer are entirely going to be in the multiplayer. Battlefield is a very intelligent development team across the entire Battlefield Studio setup, and it makes no sense to build entire worlds for just one mode. They can build these biomes out, use them in both assets in terms of multiplayer and single player, and it cuts down development time for everybody in terms of texturing, in terms of assets, things that they can use. So all of the world building you saw in the background, be that Brooklyn Bridge being hit by a strike, or seemingly a lot of different locations around a lot of different parts of the world, and there seems to be some leaked references towards some far distant regions, as well as some ones that we might have seen before in previous Battlefields, which might allude to a few remasters in the future. But if you like the visual aesthetic of what you saw, don't worry, that's not just a single player thing, that is probably the environments that you're going to be fighting in multiplayer as well. So very positive on that front. Seeing some amphibious warfare was really good, and seeing a real emphasis on combined arms in this trailer felt fantastic. Jets got a good mention, attack helicopters, well, they got a mention, primarily crashing into things, and honestly just seeing a huge plethora of military assets that we will discuss a little bit later in this video, from like Chinooks to attack helicopters to Su-57s, was really, really impressive. It's safe to say that they want it to be a sort of collective statement that this is Battlefield, and Battlefield is all of these things. And speaking of making an emphasis, destruction. Good God, was there a lot of destruction in this trailer. I think there probably was less than 30 seconds between something flying through something and something flying through something else. Now, as a result of Battlefield 2042 moving to 128 players, the server capacity and ability to do things in terms of physics almost completely fell apart. But in Battlefield 6, there's no previous generation console limitation, they've cut down the player count substantially by the looks of things, back to the 64-player experience that we know and love, and with all of that, they get a huge amount of technical overhead to bring back physics and destruction. Now, 2042, for all of its flaws, is incredibly well optimized for a game that was capable of supporting 128 players. So, halving the player count and giving your servers effectively double the overhead, whilst also being able to do that destruction server-side, means we're probably going to see some very impressive destruction in the next Battlefield game, and a lot of the assets that you saw collapsing in the background of that video are very likely assets that are going to be part of the game. And this is kind of what I mean when I say that this entire trailer kind of felt like a statement of intent from Battlefield to say, look, this isn't everything we have, it isn't the most thrilling trailer in the world, but it was a very good trailer, but this is what Battlefield is now. It's a grounded military shooter, it's about decisions in this sort of hypothetical conflict, but most importantly, it's about combined arms and it's about destruction. To me, this is a trailer that kind of doesn't want to be anything special. It's not trying to push the boundaries of tech or trying to push the boundaries of being absolutely incredible, which is ultimately what 2042 did by going to 128 players. This is a trailer that's literally saying, this is what Battlefield is, this is what Battlefield was, and we're going to do it again very successfully. It read like that. As a sort of statement piece, it read as sort of, we're back to what we're doing, and we're back to what we know we're doing. You know, Battlefield 3, single-digit numerical, Battlefield 4, single-digit numerical, Battlefield 6, single-digit numerical. You know, it's a real continuation trend here by the looks of things, and it's set in a very modern setting, not futuristic, not being dragged into the future. It's here and now. The important part about all of this is that the gameplay translates to that. Now, yes, there have been a lot of leaks in the wild that I won't be referencing in this video, and from what we've seen publicly, it looks like they are going for a grounded Battlefield title, and I'll be able to tell you all about that on July 31st when I get hands-on at the exclusive reveal event. There were some slightly more subtle references that I think are worth mentioning, especially as a long-term Battlefield fan. To start with, the Battlefield 6 splash screen is effectively Battlefield 3 all over again, extremely very similar to Battlefield 3. The way the sort of glitch effect appeared in the background is very akin to kind of how like the kill feed used to operate in Battlefield 3. It just looked familiar. That was very deliberate design as well. It wasn't an accident. It looked like Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 in terms of UI and HUD elements had a baby, and that's what they used for the title screen to display. And the other interesting one is that the exact color palette that seems to be being used for Battlefield 6 in terms of orange is quite literally the polar opposite of the light blue color that was used for 2042. Two entirely separate ends of the color spectrum and two entirely separate uses of color that, again, it feels like an artistic decision, a creative decision, and overall a statement to say, Battlefield 6 is not 2042, we've learned our lesson from this game, this is something different. And all in all, the entire trailer, the entire reveal felt like a statement of, this is what Battlefield 6 is, this is why it isn't 2042, here's how we've learned our lessons, enjoy. And that was about it. Now, I do want to emphasize that cinematic trailers from DICE and EA are always fantastic, and until you see gameplay, you should probably temper your expectations. The reality is that any game can be made to look fantastic if there is a good enough emphasis on marketing and trailers. EA know this, DICE know this, and in the case of Battlefield, I do genuinely believe they have one of the world's best trailer teams, not just for video games, but for pretty much any type of entertainment full stop. Now, yes, some of the information and some of the leaks we've seen do look very promising. It does look like the trailer is going to match the gameplay, but we just have to temper our expectations for now. Now, if you're interested about what military assets were listed in this trailer, I have all of them appearing on screen now, both in terms of vehicles, both in terms of aerial vehicles, both in terms of weapons. These are all of the things that appeared in this trailer, and this was very thoughtfully put together by Torbis. Drop him a follow, I'll drop a few links in the description below. A good friend of mine who went through and found all the assets one by one. And we're seeing actual weaponry, you know, not seemingly reskins or slightly different variants. I think we're actually going to see licensed weaponry in this game, which is nice to see. We're talking the G36, the M4A1, the HK433, the MPX, the MP5, the RPKM, the SV98, the M60. You know, all of these very iconic military weapons, and then on top of that, very iconic military vehicles. The M1 Abrams makes an appearance, the Leopard 2, the Eurocopter Tiger, the AH-64 Apache, the UH-60 Black Hawk, F-16s, F-22s, Su-57s, and even Chinooks and Little Birds all take place in this. We even potentially saw a Gripen E-jet, which is pretty impressive. Now, usually with most video games, there tends to be some sort of issue with licensing these things for the games, or some kind of dispute or payment dispute, or just generally copyright disputes and all sorts that make these things a little bit more challenging. Whether or not they actually stick to these names, I hope they do. I hope they try to stick to them as many as humanly possible, because it was just so refreshing and nice to see an actual military aesthetic in this game. You know, we're talking real world assets in the modern day being used in a modern day set game. None of this futuristic stuff, nothing being dragged forward into the future. Just what is available in the world right now is in Battlefield 6. So it's looking very positive, and I think it's time to talk about the things that, in my view, Battlefield 6 needs to be successful. And I'm going to start by talking in a little bit of a continuation from the weapons conversation that we just had, that it needs to be grounded in a military setting. Battlefield is by no means a milsim. It's not a military simulation game. It's a military sandbox game that has a couple of wacky things like launching a jeep into the sky, or flipping helicopters, or driving up the side of a building. It's not meant to be realistic, but it's meant to feel grounded aesthetically. And honestly, people are so tired of the Fortnite-ification of every video game. You've got Peter Griffins running around in about 6 different games at this point, and about 75 different variations of Star Wars. You know, it gets tiresome. You know, the ability for Battlefield to maintain a military aesthetic and still continue to sell cosmetics that look good. You know, maybe that's an SAS cosmetic bundle. Maybe it's a kill tracker on the side of your weapon that looks very pleasing. Even if it's something like weapon blueprints or character skins that just feel grounded in the universe and reality, they can make those look as cool as they damn please. And quite frankly, I think it would really lend itself to the game. Ultimately, a good game in terms of core mechanics and fun is a good game, irrespective of what everything in the world around it looks like. But I honestly do really feel like if you go back and play Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, and even Battlefield 1, and you kind of go, wow, like I feel really immersed in what's going on around me and really kind of dialed in this experience, because everything visually and aesthetically makes a lot of sense. Yes, there were the odd wacky conclusion, like a bloody bipod knife, but it just felt right. The next major thing is a clean launch. We absolutely cannot be dealing with another Battlefield that takes 6 months to actually work properly or is riddled with foundational issues. DICE have had a very long time, EA has had a very long time, Battlefield Studios as a whole has an entire code base of 2042 to work off of, to give them an optimized engine, things that they can work with, assets that they can start working with, that will just make this launch hopefully smoother than others. Battlefield has a fantastic track record of getting the fundamentals correct. 2042, despite all of its flaws, actually feels incredibly responsive now in terms of being a shooter. Has great optimization, the audio is really good, the performance is fantastic, and if they can translate that to a new release, that's a really big W going forward. The next is community features. I mean, Battlefield is entirely made up of communities, and I'm not just talking about having platoons, which is a very nice thing to have that allows you to organize your friends into one place or a group of you into one place. But the next big thing for me, and this ties into these community features, is a server browser. Now, whether we're talking actually being able to rent servers and use them in Battlefield 6, or if we're talking some variation of Battlefield Portal, which has seemingly not been confirmed but has had some shouts about it. I'm not entirely sure what the situation with that is. I'm sure we'll find out more. Just the ability for people to host their own community experiences, whether that's paying EA directly for a server or spooling up servers in some kind of portal-based environment and allowing them to play the way they want to play with servers that are protected from trouble, is fantastic. And it's really something that I hope they lean into. Now, whilst it looks like Battlefield 6 is going to have a fantastic anti-cheat, and it's been working very hard behind closed doors to get something substantial out the door, and obviously being a paid title means that that is even more beneficial, the idea that we can give the keys to the community and allow them to police their own environments, look after their own communities, and most importantly, have fun with those communities is massive for Battlefield. You know, games like Battlefield 4 and 3 lasted for years and years and years off the back of community experiences, community nights, Friday Night Battlefield, you know, people just messing around and having fun in the world of Battlefield. And community parts are a really key feature of that, and having a server browser and portal is a really key feature of that. Battlefield is pretty much the last shooter left where engagement-based matchmaking or skill-based matchmaking is not the emphasis of the game. You know, the emphasis of the game is just, here's a sandbox, have some fun, sometimes you'll win, sometimes you'll lose, sometimes you'll get absolutely demolished, other times you'll be demolishing people. It's nothing to do with, you must have this KD to do this. It's a whole departure from all of the fatiguing elements that a lot of people are experiencing across the FPS space right now. The game will probably have some degree of skill-based matchmaking in order to make sure that teams are balanced, but not to the extent that we've seen in things like Warzone, not to the extent of things that we've seen in like Fortnite. It's just two very different worlds. The next major key to success is a steady flow of content. Battlefield 1 very infamously had a huge gap between the game releasing and its first expansion pack, and that just can't really be the case anymore. Whether it's weekly events for certain rewards, or actual map drops and content drops, or if it's new weapon drops or new equipment, just having a good steady flow of content that isn't a constant drip feed is really big for the game, and especially if they manage to enable tools in something like Battlefield Portal, if that is coming to Battlefield 6, that is a massive opportunity for them to create buckets of replayability whilst producing new assets. And the final part of this is not necessarily a key to success for Battlefield 6, but it's something that I genuinely feel has a potential ceiling to blow the ceiling off of this game. Now, Battlefield 6 is clearly, by the looks of things, or rumored, coming with a Battle Royale. A Battle Royale that will have a better anti-cheat than most of the other anti-cheats for BRs out there, a Battle Royale that will probably have better servers than nearly every other Battle Royale out there, and a Battle Royale that will have the most destruction, most audio, just key fundamental things that have become fatiguing features of other BRs. Out of the box for this Royale should be better. You know, we're talking about probably minimum 45 Hz servers. We're talking about an actual anti-cheat that might actually work for once compared to something like Warzone's. We're talking about things like server stability and performance, good audio systems, good audio cues, just all the things and bases of what Battlefield does very well could work exceptionally well in a BR setting. Whilst I don't think BF6 necessarily needs a BR to be a great game, it doesn't need that at all. The potential for a Battlefield BR to take over the entire world in terms of Battle Royales is pretty much undeniable. The goal is wide open. PUBG's on a bit of a lull and hasn't really done much. Warzone is absolutely in the trenches and possibly in the worst state it's ever been. There is so much space on the market right now for something new to come along and offer a unique experience, and if they do it, don't lean into it being a sweaty Battle Royale. Lean into it being a fun sandbox and a BR second. Now, I know lots of people in the comment section are probably already writing, "Oh, BRs are disgusting, such a dead trend," or also typing stuff like, "Why are they wasting their time on that?" Well, Ripple Effect are probably doing the Battle Royale, which means that they're not even touching the multiplayer to some extent. It's an entirely separate dev team that's not going to detract from the multiplayer experience. And two, BRs are still, to this day, the most successful format of video game in the world. Like, it's not even close. If you look at the player counts for Battle Royales versus everything else, two very different worlds. And I think everybody can agree that whether you like BRs or dislike them, there's no denying that they are a massive driving force for a modern shooter, and no denying that a third mode for something like Battlefield could be good. It just can't be executed the way something like Hazard Zone was executed. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts and feelings down below in the comment section. Let me know what you're thinking about Battlefield 6, and again, please make sure you're subscribed and drop a like. Not only are we on the road to 200k here on the channel, we also will be live streaming the reveal exclusively on July 31st. We will be some of the world's first people to not only play the game, but also to publicly produce gameplay footage of it. So make sure you're locked in for that, and I'll see you again in the next one.